Today's conversation is with Keith Lambert, president of Oxidizers Inc. Now, this is a great conversation for you to tune in on, specifically because you're going to listen to someone who made that great leap from where they were working to launching their own business with full confidence that they were going to do well, only to have their first attempt be something that wasn't exactly where they wanted. And they decided to go out on a limb and build their own thing. And many of us may find ourselves in our businesses and wondering, is this what I want? Does it make sense to build something else? Some of them call it the pivot, right? The pivot doesn't always necessarily mean you destroy a business and go start a new one. It could be just a slanted view and a different strategy in the business you're already in. And sometimes it means starting an entirely new team, taking the best that you can with you and doing things the right way. What makes this interesting, though, is Keith stepped into a space that isn't necessarily glamorized by media and yet is doing incredible numbers, incredible work, providing a lot of jobs and impacting the very air we breathe day in and day out in our society. From restaurants that are processing foods and whether or not it was in a clean facility to the very facilities that are building the infrastructure in our country and so on and so forth. And what was great about listening to him break it down was watching how clear it was for him, what he needed to articulate to his team, to the people he was working with. And then even having his eye on the ball to the point where he understood when their business was mature enough for him to branch out and create a software on top of the service that they were providing. And because he already had the relationships. Can you see where this is going? This is someone who's been paying attention clearly, is not the only person involved in the business, even goes to break down exactly why it's important not to feel like you have to own everything, right? You can split that up and triple the impact if you get the right partners involved. So if you're interested in listening to a conversation like that and really hearing it from someone who's doing great and is only just getting started, and they're already surprised that the goal they thought was a big goal is now, I got to come up with a new goal. And what does that look like? And that's a great problem to have in business, right? So if you're looking for a little inspiration in that regard, along with a story that really breaks down some interesting ways of communicating with people you're working with, this is the conversation for you. Without further ado, Keith Lambert of Oxidizers. Man, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here, Keith. This isn't the first time we've chatted, and every time that you and I have spoken, it has always been an absolute pleasure. So having you here to talk to this community for the Strategic Advisor Board podcast, it's really one that I wholeheartedly treasure. You know, I've heard some great things before we hit record that have developed since we last spoke. But before we get into all that, I'd love it if we could just recap a little bit about when you made that jump and you stepped into the world of business and sort of some of the things that were going through your mind, and then ultimately some things you were surprised that you had to face that you didn't think were ever going to be part of the journey.
Right, right. All right. Well, my career started 34 years ago. I was a design engineer in an environmental company, and like everyone else, go in, put my time in. This is what we're working on. This is a project we're doing. And I'd done that for 20 some odd years, right? Kept working. Then I had an opportunity from a coworker to help start a division for another company. And so, okay, this was the first opportunity that I was given to say, okay, with a blank piece of paper, what would I do? What would we build? How would we go from an idea and a concept to an actual business that brings in revenue? So I would say that building, which was a wonderful opportunity, being able to build a division for another company sort of gave me the initial blueprint, where we went from three guys meeting at Starbucks. We meet at Starbucks every week. Hey, what do we got to do with this? We got this and that. And I was building the website while one of the other guys was doing drawings. Another guy was doing engineering. And we all had these different roles. And then as we built it, and we built it to be a very successful division for that company. And so I actually, a few years into it, we were all like, man, this isn't as difficult as you may hear it to necessarily be. And so changes happened with the company, stuff like that, new CEO, things along those lines. And then I realized that I had zero growth potential in the ways I wanted to grow. The company had certain aspects that it wanted to grab out of the market and then tear those things apart and sort of reestablish them in their own version. And the people part is what always bothers me. And so I was like, well, it was my time. So I realized I had two choices. I was like, okay, I stay where I am and continue to be a cog that's part of the machine. Or I say, okay, if I'm going to venture out, first thing I have to do is think and see who is with me, who is really interested. So I talked to a couple different people, some past partners that I've worked with in the same company, some people that weren't, some family members, getting advice on, okay, as I do this, number one, who and where and how do I want to have partners to be a part of this? Because it's very hard. It's hard to start from scratch when you're at zero. I literally came up with a business plan and I was like, that's my plan. I don't want to do it yet, but that was my plan, And so then I through the business world that I was in, I was able to find what worked out well, a partner, but also a mentor, because he had already built the model. He's done it before, just not in the same space where I was on the design and environmental, side of the world. And so great, we partnered up, said, okay, we're going to start this company. First year, we're like, maybe we'll do $1 million, and you don't know. And you start guessing at where you can start building this entity from. And I'd say the hardest part was probably trusting in myself to take that leap that I do know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? You can sit there and you can do something and say, oh, I'm a craftsman at this, or I'm a craftsman at that. But then when you're truly pitted with the idea of, now I have to put it on my back and prove it to myself and the rest of the world, it can be daunting, And so I say it's so funny because some of those first conversations and hard times that I had to have with myself of, okay, Keith, you're about to do this, and where are you? You know what I mean? Where am I mentally? Where am I spiritually? Where am I physically? Because the amount of energy that you need to put out to go from a sheet of paper to something tangible, it's unlike anything else you could ever think of if you put everything into it. So I'd say, man, it was a lot of self-examination and making sure that I also had those people to talk to. I had my mentor, hey, this is what I'm feeling. You'd be like, power through it, put the bull by the horns, and take it on, whatever it may be. And then, of course, family and friends. And I had a really good network around me, which can be hard to sometimes have, because a lot of times people will be doubters and dousing on you all these different things. And I just couldn't let that bother me or slow me down, if that makes sense. So those are some of the, the hard challenges, that you go through. I think the biggest hurdle for anyone in this space of saying, hey, I want to go from A to B, is getting over yourself, getting over those fears,
Yeah, it sounds like that was a really defining qualities, which is why you told the story the way that you did. Just to have that tenacity internally, that grit, and the ability to turn certain noise off and still focus, because you're right. People, especially people who love you, will talk you out of it because they love you and they don't want to say you hurt, but they also don't understand that hurt is part of the process,
It
right?
is.
And
It is.
and
It
that,
is.
yeah, you can't become an entrepreneur and a business owner without taking that risk and feeling the burn for a bit, right? It's like, it's
Well,
literally
exactly.
impossible.
Right. It's going to hurt. Okay. This is not going to be easy. It's, late nights, early mornings. I mean, my wife thought I was crazy because it was like every morning I'm about 4, 5, 6 in the morning, 4 or 5 in the morning, burning through 6, 7 o'clock at night. Okay. Slowing down, but it's what you have to do, and I think those are the hard traits that if you're not born with it, or you don't see an example in your life, it's hard to say, okay, how do I get to that point? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My dad was an entrepreneur. So in me, it was bred. Hey, you will work hard. I remember having a soldering iron in my hand when I was like 9 years old. To
Wow.
work at his company. You know what I mean? Just he put me in on all these different things, but it built a work ethic, thankfully.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's good to know. Examples definitely help. It makes it more visceral, more real,
Mm.
what's possible. And examples. Just it's such a learning curve hack, right? To be able to see that in action. Do you have colleagues that didn't have that, who may have struggled while you were building, who just simply couldn't hold on to the vision because they didn't have examples, or
Yeah,
is that
I had some very early on who, the panic would set in. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But this is the one thing I've learned, and it doesn't matter what your ultimate goal and what you're trying to conquer. The goal of an entrepreneur is to, number one, sell yourself on the idea, the concept, and where the business wants to go. And then the number two is you sell your staff on that same dream. You know what I mean? An entrepreneur is just a dream seller. You're the one going, hey, look, I got this dream. I got this vision. Bob, you're with me? Come on, Bob. Dan, you're with me? Come on, Dan. And then you're selling the dream to them so that they get the fire and then they get the passion. And I think that's one of the missed parts about creating and starting an entity is, so many people, oh no, if I have a partner, then I got to give up some percentages, or if I work with somebody else, then it's not me in control. And it's like, I laugh at it because I go, would I want to be 60% owner of a multi-million dollar company or 100% owner of a $50,000 company?
certainly do the math, right? Yeah.
You do the math and you go, wait a minute. So I always look at that and I go, people are always so afraid of giving up equity. And it's like, no, it doesn't mean you have to sell the farm. But if you can get people that are key individuals and they're all after that same dream, then you're not just doing it yourself. So that was a
Uh,
big thing.
Big difference there. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because now that we know like what level you're playing at in this game of life and entrepreneurship, let's talk about oxidizers a bit and let the listeners know like what you're working on, because they may very well know someone who's doing some running some kind of business that
Right.
could actually learn a thing or two about the way that you're changing the industry when it comes to
Right.
maintenance. Like I remember one particular example. I think you were working with certain restaurants, or am I mistaken? But there was this idea of like they try to clean things and have the things at a certain level, and we just don't know if we can measure that properly. So my memory might be blurry. So you
A
might have to
little,
work me through that.
no worries. We're a little different. So what we do is we provide, if someone's making cars and they're painting the cars, we would provide the maintenance for that, for the
Right.
equipment that would abate all the toxins and the paint fumes and stuff like that.
Right.
But we do that in all sorts of industries, whether it's, jets that are being made, battleships that are being made, burritos that are being made, any
Yeah,
kind
that's
of
what I meant. Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Right. Okay. That's what you mean. Okay. So any kind of process that would have a pollutant, that's where we come in. And
Yeah.
so when we started the company 11 years ago now, I can't believe it's been 11 years. There's two ways you can do it. You can do it. You're like, hey, I'm all about new sales, sales, sales. And that's the way my model and the way I learned at it before. But myself and my partner, we said, no, let's go the opposite way. So what we did is we focused 100% on maintenance. Hey, customer, let me maintain your equipment. Hey, let me maintain your equipment. Let me maintain your equipment. And as we did this over these years, we're on average anywhere from 450 to 700 different industrial sites in the U.S. A year that we're in, out, playing, moving, doing
Wow.
what we do. Now, what we did is by building that clientele on the maintenance side. I mean, literally, we were just awarded a very wonderful contract with a large automotive manufacturer. We're very pleased with it. And it was all because, not of me, but because of my crew and staff that provided maintenance for this client for years. And so then the opportunity came up and they're like, hey, will you bid? Will you be a part of it? And how can I say no? We've maintained the equipment they had, and now they're asking, okay, now can you put your equipment in? And so I'd say for entrepreneurs, one thing you want to do is don't be afraid to flip the script on
No, you're good. It's a Mac
on
OS thing. It's a known issue, actually.
I know. On how you go into the business. And so with oxidizers, like I said, we started with maintenance and service, and now we're selling many, many, many pieces of new kit. Hey, I need to replace my old oxidizer. Hey, I need to replace my old thermal oxidizer. And so it's worked out very well, and then at the same time, when I started Oxidizers, I started working on a maintenance platform called Incheck, purposely for the idea that once it was what I would say where we are now, finally mature, it can help with your daily maintenance. It can help with all the routines that people are to do to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to maintain the equipment. So it's been a rush, you know what I mean? But it's one of those things that I look at it and I go, even where we are today, I had goals set for this year. Thankfully, we year over year, we've only added on in revenue. It's been a blessing, right? So even this year, I set the goals for the beginning of the year, and then honestly, floodgates are opening, and I'm like, I need to set a new goal. I can't just go, we're done. We got our anchor job. No, that doesn't exist. It's like, nope, let's keep going. Let's keep building. So that's why I love opportunities like this, because I never list, other than my dad's example, it was just, I'm gonna do something. you know?
Yeah.
So I love that you're providing this for people to be able to hear and get an understanding of, okay, where am I on my own mental state with what I'm doing? And if I am including others, am I selling the dream to them? Because honestly, some of my people, I was talking to one of my people today on the software side with Incheck, and I was like, oh man, think did I oversell this? We're just like, they're that in tune, which is awesome. You know what I mean? Which is what you want. So it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super cool that you were able to already put a plan in place once you saw your own market share begin to mature and you reached a level where you had anticipated you would get to, and already have a new plan in place, and that's already beginning to grow.
Yeah.
There's clearly a need for what you're doing. Can you explain the problem that you originally were looking to service in terms of maintenance? Like, because you're obviously doing something very differently than others.
Right.
Otherwise, the demand wouldn't be that high. What
Right.
what was the problem that people were facing that oxidizers saw so clearly?
The biggest thing, and it doesn't matter whether it's with an oxidizer or a fleet of trucks, it's follow through. We as humans, I think it's all of us. If I don't have to get up and go off the couch to pick a drink, grab a drink and come back, I don't want to do it. And so the idea and sort of the focus of oxidizers was always, look, we do good work. We want to do the work that you don't necessarily want to do, and we'll do it at the right price, the right timing for you, and give you the end result that you want. And so it was one of those spots. I mean, I kid you not, we work on units in places that you would not want to go. Just, food processing places and all sorts of different industries where you go, well, what happens after that's thrown out? You don't want to know. And so, we're there doing work that not everyone even wants to do. You know what I mean? So a lot of it really came from sort of that mindset of, we'll do better personally than you would want to do, because we're vested to make sure that we're doing more than the customer expects.
And I love that your industry is so off the beaten path of what is like sexy in media, because that's why you're such a good business, right? That I was speaking to somebody recently on the same show, and they sort of brought up this idea that there's a lot of media influence on people wanting to become entrepreneurs, and what does that mean? And the red Ferrari, and Wall
Mm-hmm.
Street, and they sell this whole dream, and you are living a fantastic dream that most people hope to attain one day, right? But it wasn't the way that they painted it out, where you're
No,
building something that's impacting people's lives daily, quality of air, quality, longevity of their machines, whether they need to
no,
I mean, this stuff is not cheap for companies
no,
to
it's
replace. So maintenance is
not.
worth it,
It,
big
well, and
time.
that's the thing. It's funny you mentioned that, because honestly, even in the segment and industry where we are, you're right. There is nothing sexy about it. People are gonna like, what do you? I mean, literally years of people I've known have been like, what do you do again? And I'm like, and then you explain it, and then you go, well, trillions of cubic feet of air a year are under our care, is how I always explain to people. Clean air, clean air, clean air. And they, I mean, my partner, before he and I met, he you talk about living the lifestyle. He could do anything he wanted, and it was all on maintenance. And people, like you said, it just isn't necessarily something that people relate to. They think of the like you. Oh, I'm gonna, do some trading. I'm gonna have a Ferrari and drive down the street, and it's like, well, you could do that, but there were many other ways to do that.
Industry in general, like heavy industry and all that people do not see the things that run the day to day of society.
They don't.
And it's just not made sexy, even though it's the most fundamental to the fabric of our society every day. What Oxidizers is doing is amazing. Just making sure that, the next time you get your food at Chipotle, it was done in an environment that was actually well taken care of, like,
and clean. Exactly.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Exactly, man.
let alone, I live next to a Chevron oil refinery,
There you go.
in El Segundo, and I know they need maintenance like nobody's business for all the things that
Nonstop.
they do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Weapons manufacturing companies out here that I'm next to, like,
There you go.
people don't know, but all these things impact our everyday lives. It's not just the
They do.
smog from the freeway or in Los Angeles. There's so many things. And
Exactly.
to know that you built a software now that you've captured the maintenance market because you did good work and everyone knew they can trust you. You mature as a business. You've been building this software and now it's taking off. And is this client end software so that they can know when things are up, or is this the service tech's software?
It does both. You can have it so that, like my company, we're rolling it out and we're utilizing it so that when a client comes in and we're maintaining their equipment, we give them things like their daily checklist. There are things on every piece of equipment you should do every day. The problem is, Harry, did you do that? Yeah, I did it. And then it's like, where's the records? Only when there's a problem, an explosion, someone dies, something happens, then people go, oh, wait a minute, where are we on this stuff? And so that's when we started to build the platform, where I wanted to have a true verification platform that you can come in from off the street and utilize it and set up your equipment and what have you. Or as an OEM like me, I can offer it to my clients. And we just saw that the need was there, back when when you go to a piece of equipment, and I get hundreds of pictures and info from clients and my own texts and all that stuff. And you see, and it's not out of, I don't think most of it is out of, on purpose. It's just, there's so much that, like, for example, a maintenance staff at your Chevron near you has to do. And so it's so hard to know that, okay, are we really dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's? And where's the records of what's being done? And that literally is what led to it. But we're seeing it in all sorts of areas. Like I said, big box stores we're talking to, where they're going, hey, what's going on here? It's funny. I always tell people, you can tell, like, you go to a restaurant. I always use this as an example. You go to a restaurant, right? Hey, let's go to so-and-so and grab a bite to eat. Great. You go in, you go to that bathroom. And if you see what that bathroom looks like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because I won't eat there, man.
I can't even go to a place now. But what are you doing behind the kitchen? What am I? And that's sort of how I look at it. And that's why we came up with the whole idea of the platform, because it's like there are so many little indicators that businesses don't realize. Wow, why are we trending down and people coming into our store, into our restaurant, into our warehouse? What? And it's like, guys, it's making sure that you're keeping that level you need to. So,
I mean, you look at what's happening with one of the major corporations like Boeing, and I don't know if they're a partner or whatever, but like there's clearly a huge need for maintenance in there. That's a PR disaster for them right now. If only they had a partner like Oxidizers there, to hold them down.
Well, like I said, that's the hard part, is making sure, and that's why I came up with Incheck. The whole idea was making sure that whatever's supposed to be done is done, And like I said,
it easy to do, right? Which is the whole thing. Because you said it yourself. We kind of glossed over it, but when you have 86 people giving you different pictures and none of it is contained anywhere, it's just in an email thread or what have you. Forget about it. I mean, construction has that same problem to this very day.
Exactly. Where it's like, it was back in an email 4 days ago. Well, that doesn't help you. you can't capture it and then say, okay, oh, here this needs attention, and then you put it on, and it's known. And that literally is why we do, have developed what we developed. My partners were like, hurry, like 5 years ago. They were like, get moving. And I'm like, no, we have to have it mature, we have to have it ready, because with my clientele as well, I can't just present a half-baked idea. I have to make
Yeah.
sure, okay, hey, this is real. This is solid. Our servers are on Microsoft Azure, just like Amazon, and so, but it's been great, man. It really has. It's been really good.
Yeah. And you also have like people in the field who have seen what needs to be accounted for on a regular basis. And you've built a reputation for being the kind of people who have actually been able to keep maintenance at a level, at a standard that is
Exactly.
respectable and demanded. And
Mm-hmm.
therefore, you build a software that keeps all that in. Not only does it help your guys, right, who are out in the field, or your people who are out in the field doing their job, it makes it even better because now they have a system that they know and trust, but the
Exactly.
clientele as well has that visibility, and
Yeah.
ahead of time they can tell you, no, we haven't done this, and what that gives them
Right.
in terms of visibility for their team and what they're doing at
Well,
the end of
and
the
and
day.
that and you just said it, is that transparency where suddenly you
Mhm.
realize, oh, wait, and that's the thing that people don't want to deal with is, are we really doing what we're supposed
Yeah.
to do?
People are afraid to
know?
look, man. People are afraid to look at health. People are afraid to look at finances, and people are
Exactly.
afraid to look at the health of their infrastructure in their
Mm-hmm.
businesses. Uh,
Exactly.
when you put things
Exactly.
together with bubble gum and staples, I mean, you
And hope.
know,
And you just hope.
hope. And man, and they have a closet full of what they call keepers, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes the most impressive thing you can do for an industry is actually bring some order and so
Exactly.
to the whole system. And it's
Exactly,
incredible
man.
how few people are willing to take that up. Uh,
Well, that's the thing, because it's scary. We don't want to really, it's like, do I really have to make my bed? Do I really have to make my bed every morning? And it's like, all right, let's see.
and it's your industry domain expertise that really allowed you to understand like what does good maintenance look like, how have we improved the longevity of the gear you already invested in, the equipment that you right, and now we're taking it even further. And not only that, you've built these incredible relationships, so now all the businesses that are aligned with you also get a better reputation because who do they use for maintenance? Oxidizers, right? Like, so it's just the level of impact that a business can have when they adhere to standards, they have a clear vision, and they're aware of exactly what they're trying to accomplish and
Yeah,
have goals that they continue to exceed and now need to set new goals. I mean, those are good
that's right.
problems. It's really exciting stuff to hear. And more importantly, it's an industry that nobody seems to be paying attention to, but we should have from the very beginning.
Right. Right. No, I get you. I get you. I get
Yeah.
you. I sleep well at night because I know every day. No, really, man, I sleep well every night because I know every day the guys and girls that I work with are making a difference. And I sit and I go, hey, every day that we know that we're cleaning up a spot where you don't want that stuff going out into the atmosphere, I know that we're contributing, to help things. So that's what keeps me going, you know.
So now that you've moved into software, and I'll make sure we close out with this being respectful of your time here,
Sure.
but now that you're moving into software, do you find that you're looking at the role that you play in business differently than when you were doing maintenance and focused more on the field teams and things of that nature?
See, that's the funny part. I really don't, because there's so, in the end, every company is made up of people, right? And so it's like, as far in advance as AI is and robotics, we're not at the point to where you don't need humans, you don't need human interaction. So in the end, it still comes down to number one, how's everyone in the company treated? How do they feel? How are they respected? The next part is, how are we applying our products to the, whether it's mechanical and you're working on a piece of equipment, or you're providing a template and saying, here's the skeleton of what someone needs to do to then maintain that equipment. So it's kind of funny, man, because it really just sort of goes hand in hand, where it really just comes down to being able to show and what's the term I want to use? I guess being able to really to show and explain the simple facts that are needed to go from, again, point A to point B. And it's the same thing whether it's a guy with a wrench in his hand getting it done, or it's a piece of software that's helping to make sure that guy had it in his hand and got it done. You know what I mean? It's been fun. It really has.
And, I think one of the things that really stood out to me in this conversation, yet again, not being our first conversation, is your ability to articulate exactly what you're trying to communicate and how that has fed throughout your entire organization, the services you provide, the software that you provide. It's
Right.
clear what was happening was there was a failure to communicate in one way or another to begin with in the industry, and you came along and created clear communication channels,
I
and
appreciate
that
that.
has impacted people's lives, livelihoods, right, by
Yeah.
fostering jobs and businesses. And this is the power of entrepreneurship. So Keith, I want to thank you, man. Truly been a pleasure having you on again.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I appreciate it.